Yeah, welcome back to the channel, and today we focus on monohybrid crosses. Now, we have three different types of monohybrid crosses. We can have what we call complete dominance, we can have incomplete dominance, and we can have codominance. Today, we're only going to focus on complete dominance, right? But before we do that, what is a monohybrid cross? We know that the word mono simply means one. So this is a cross wherein we're interested with the inheritance of only one characteristic at a time, right? So we're only interested in how a certain characteristic is inherited in a family, only one characteristic at a time. So let's focus on complete dominance. Now, incomplete dominance, this is when a genotype is in a heterozygous condition. The dominant allele will determine the phenotype, but the effects of the recessive allele are going to be masked. Right? We know that when we say a genotype is in a heterozygous condition, we're simply saying that it is made up of different letters. Not necessarily different, but a capital letter and a small letter, or completely different letters. Both apply to being heterozygous. But since this is complete dominance, let's say, for example, we can have capital letter T and small letter t. This is an example of a genotype that is in a heterozygous condition because it is made up of a capital letter and a small letter. Simply because these two letters are not identical, we therefore say that this genotype is heterozygous. But it is said that the dominant allele in this case will determine the phenotype. So we know that the capital letter here represents the dominant allele. It represents the dominant trait. And we also know that the small letter t here represents the recessive trait, that is the recessive allele. Now, in a heterozygous condition like this, where we have a dominant allele and a recessive allele, the capital letter will always win, which therefore tells us that whatever is controlled by this recessive allele is not going to be visible. It is not going to be shown in the phenotype. And therefore we say that the effects of this recessive allele are therefore masked. So in this sense, the capital letter, the dominant allele, completely dominates the recessive allele. Hence we call it complete dominance. Now, let's perform some monohybrid crosses involving complete dominance. Let's look at the first example. It says that in dogs, rough hair. So I know that the trait here that is being investigated, it is the texture of the hair. So they are saying that rough hair, which is controlled by the allele capital letter H, is dominant. And it was not necessary for them to tell us that rough hair is dominant, since we know that if an allele is represented by a capital letter, we already know that it tells us that this allele is dominant, right? So rough hair is dominant to smooth hair, which is controlled by small letter h. Let's read further. A heterozygous rough-haired dog is crossed with a smooth-haired dog. The instruction is for us to do a genetic cross to represent the phenotypic ratio of the puppies. So we have to perform a genetic cross with the information that has been provided to us. So we already know that rough hair is dominant and it is controlled by capital letter H. Smooth hair is recessive and it is controlled by small letter h. So then let's look at the parents. It is said that one of the parents is heterozygous for rough hair. Now, when they say this parent is heterozygous, we know that the genotype of this parent has to be made up of capital letter H and small letter h, because these are the alleles we are using in this example, and this is the only way in which these alleles are going to be heterozygous. So we already know the genotype of the first parent is going to be capital letter H, small letter h. Right? So this parent was crossed with another dog who had smooth hair. But we know that the allele for smooth hair is small letter h. Now, since small letter h is recessive, the allele for the small letter, the allele for the recessive trait can only be expressed in the phenotype when the genotype is made up of two recessive alleles. So in order for this dog to have this smooth hair, it means that the genotype of this dog must be small letter h, small letter h. So what we have now is that we know the genotype of parent number 1, and we also know the genotype of parent number 2. Now we are ready to perform our genetic cross. Let's perform that cross in the next slide. Now, with genetic crosses, there is a general structure to be followed, and we're going to fill in that structure as we continue with this genetic cross, right? So first off, we write P1. In front of P1, we're going to write phenotype. Now, P1 simply means the phenotype of the parents, right? So we know that one of the parents was said to have rough hair. So this is a rough-haired dog. This rough-haired dog was crossed with another dog that had smooth hair. So what I do in the phenotype, I know that phenotype simply means the physical appearance of this organism. So when I look at the first parent, I was told that it is going to have rough hair. That is why I wrote rough-haired dog. And this X simply tells us that this dog is being crossed with another dog which was said to have smooth hair. So this is a smooth-haired dog, right? Now below phenotype, I'm going to write genotype. I'm going to write genotype. Now, the rough-haired dog, they were specific in telling me that this rough-haired dog was also heterozygous. So I know that the genotype for this rough-haired dog is going to be capital letter H, small letter h. It can also have rough hair if it was capital letter H, capital letter H. But because they told me that this dog was heterozygous, it tells me that the only possible right answer for this rough-haired dog will be capital letter H, small letter h. So I'm going to cross that again with this smooth-haired dog, which had the genotype small letter h, small letter h. Again, smooth hair is recessive in this instance, and for the recessive trait to be expressed in the phenotype, the genotype must have two recessive alleles. That is to say, it must be homozygous recessive, right? Below genotype, I have to write meiosis. Now, in front of meiosis, I do not write anything. So I continue. And then here I come to my gametes. We know that through the process of meiosis, that is how gametes actually produced. That is spermatogenesis in males and oogenesis in females, right? So when I write gametes, I simply separate my genotype by a comma. So in this case, it is going to be capital letter H, comma, and small letter h. That is the gametes that are going to be produced by the rough-haired dog. And then X, smooth-haired dog, the same, small letter h, comma, small letter h. So I simply separate the genotype by a comma. And then after gametes, now comes fertilization. Now you can do this using a genetic cross involving lines, but I prefer to use a Punnett square, and that is what I am going to draw. That is 3 lines, 3 boxes going sideways. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, like so. In the top left box, I'm simply going to write gametes again, and then in the top 2 boxes, I'm going to indicate them in red. In this box and also that box, I have to write the genotype of the first parent. I have to write the gametes of the first parent, excuse me. So I know that the first gamete for the first parent was capital letter H, so I'm going to write that capital letter H there. And the second gamete was small letter h, so I'm going to write that small letter h there. And then in these boxes that I'm going to indicate in blue, I'm going to write the gametes of the second parent. Now, since the gametes of the second parent was small letter h, the first small letter h, I'm going to write it in the first box, and the second small letter h, I'm going to write it in the second box, right? Now, for For the sake of simplicity, let's name these boxes. Let's say this is box 1, box 2, box 3, and box number 4. Right? So now let's perform our genetic cross. So when box 1 and box 3 combine, they're going to combine in this box right here. And when we write the genotype, it is important to note that we're supposed to start with the capital letter and then the small letter will follow. So when box 1 and box 3 combine, they're going to give us the genotype capital letter H, small letter h. Right? When box 1 and box 4 combine, they're going to give us capital letter H from the top and small letter h from the side. What about when box 3 and box 2 combine? They're going to give us small letter h from the top, small letter h from the side. What about box 2 and box 4? They're also going to give us small letter h from the top and small letter h from the side. Right? Now to continue with my genetic cross, in the side here, I'm going to write F1. F1 simply represents the offspring of the first generation. In front of F1, I have to write genotype. Here, I'm simply going to copy all the genotypes that I produced from this one to that one. So it is going to be capital letter H, small letter h, capital letter H, small 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 letter h. Below genotype, I'm now going to write phenotype. Right? So let's look at these individuals. Let's look at individual 1, individual 2, individual 3, and individual number 4. Let's try to come up with the phenotypes for all these individuals. So individual 1, we have capital letter H and small letter h. Now this genotype is in a heterozygous condition. This tells us that the capital letter here is going to win. So the phenotype of this dog is going to be rough-haired. The same will also apply for dog number 2. So dog number 1 and dog number 2 will both have rough hair. But dog number 3, the genotype is small letter h, small letter h. Now these are recessive alleles, and we know that when two recessive alleles together make the genotype, then the phenotype is going to be that of the recessive alleles, which tells me that dog number 3 and dog number 4 are going to have smooth hair. So I've got two rough-haired dogs, and I also have two smooth-haired dogs. But this is not answering the question. The question asked us to write the phenotypic ratio. So I'm going to write that down here, phenotypic ratio. So the phenotypic ratio is that I've got two rough hair is to two smooth hair. But the phenotypic ratio has to be written in simplest form. I know that 2 goes into 2 once and 2 will also go into 2 once. So my final answer here is going to be 1:1. That is going to be my phenotypic ratio. Now, it is important that when you are writing this genetic cross, you include all this information. This is going to be your general structure for making a genetic cross. It is very important that you include it, as in itself it carries 2 marks and the cross will carry 4. Right? Let's continue. Let's look at another example. Example number 2. It says that piebaldism is a genetic condition which is characterized by a person having a white patch of hair. Piebaldism is controlled by a single dominant allele, capital letter H. So I know that in order for a person to have piebaldism, this person must have capital letter H. Okay, let's continue. The diagram below shows a person with piebaldism. So that's how you're going to look. A man with a white patch of hair. So this is the man. The man has got a white patch of hair. So this man has got piebaldism. And a woman with a white patch of hair. So both the man and the woman have got this white patch of hair, right? So this couple, they said that they have got 2 children. The first child was born without a white patch of hair, and the second child was born with a white patch of hair. Now this is very interesting. The parents both have this white patch of hair, but there's one child here who is without this white patch of hair. And I know that in order for you to have this white patch of hair, you must have the dominant allele, which is capital letter H. But since this couple was able to have child number 1 here, who does not have this white patch of hair, it tells me that the genotype for this child has to be small letter h, because this child does not have this white patch of hair. So that is the only possible genotype. Because if this genotype was in a heterozygous condition, for example, if it was capital letter H and small letter h, then this child would have the white patch of hair, since the dominant allele there would determine the phenotype. So for this child, the genotype has to be small letter h. But I know that each and every single characteristic is controlled by 2 alleles. And those 2 alleles, one has to come from the paternal origin and the other has to come from the maternal origin. But since each of the parents have piebaldism, I know that in the father, there is the dominant trait that is resulting in piebaldism. And the dominant trait, the dominant allele, is also present in the mother. But since this child has got a small letter h, it tells me that this child received a small letter h from the father. Therefore, the genotype of the father has to be capital letter H, small letter h. But the same will also apply for the mother, which tells me that the mother also had to have capital letter H, small letter h. These therefore result in the production of this child who has small letter h. So the first small letter h was received from the paternal origin, and the second small letter h was received from the maternal origin. Now this still makes sense, because if this is the father, then the father still has this white patch of hair, because capital letter H will determine the phenotype. The same also applies for the mother. So they are both heterozygous, which result in the formation of this child. So I used the child to determine the genotype of the parents, right? So the second point says that the second child was born with a white patch of hair. Use a genetic cross to show the possibility of producing the phenotypes of the children as described above. So let's do a genetic cross to represent this information. Again, my structure starts with P1. In front of P1, I simply have to write phenotype. I write phenotype, and I know that the first one was a male with a white patch of hair, otherwise called piebaldism. Male with a white patch of hair. Male with a white patch of hair crossed with female with a white patch of hair. Right below the phenotype, I know what is to follow has to be the genotype. It is the genotype. Now, I already determined that since these 2 parents were able to produce an offspring without the white patch of hair, that their genotype has to be capital letter H, small letter h, crossed with capital letter H, small letter h, right? And then below genotype follows meiosis. Below meiosis, now comes my gametes. And in gametes, I simply separate the genotype with a comma. So it is going to be capital letter H, comma, small letter h, X, capital letter H, comma, small letter h. Below gametes now follows fertilization. Let's continue to use a Punnett square. So it is going to be 3 boxes to the side and 3 boxes downwards. So it is going to be like so. Right? In the top left, I have to write gametes again. So it is gametes. And then in box number 1 and box number 2, I'm going to write the gametes of the father, starting with capital letter H in box 1 and small letter h in box 2. In box 3 and box 4, I'm going to write the gametes of the mother, starting with capital letter H in box number 3, small letter h in box number 4. Now, a combination of box number 1 and box number 3 will give me capital letter H from the top, capital letter H from the side. In box number, I know that a cross involving box number 2 and box number 3 will give me capital letter H from the side and small letter h from the top. It is important to note that when writing a genotype, it is an absolute must that you start with the dominant allele. Hence, we started with capital letter H, small letter h. When box number 1 combines with box number 4, it is going to give me capital letter H, small letter h. Finally, when box number 2 combines with box number 4, it is going to give me small letter h, small letter h. Now, below fertilization, in the side I'm going to write F1. Those are offspring of the first generation. And in front of F1, I have to write genotype. So I simply copy the genotype of the offspring. So it is going to be capital letter H, capital letter H, capital letter H, small letter h, capital letter H, small letter h, and finally small letter h, small letter h. Below the genotype, I write phenotype. That is the phenotype of the offspring. Phenotype of the offspring. So let's look at offspring number 1. Offspring number 1 has capital letter H, capital letter H. So this guy has got a white patch of hair. Offspring number 2, capital letter H, small letter h. This is a heterozygous condition. The dominant allele will determine the phenotype. Therefore, offspring number 2 will also have a white patch of hair. Offspring number 3, same story with offspring number 2. And then offspring number 4, it is small letter h, and therefore offspring number 4 will be without a white patch of hair. So in total, I've got 3 with a white patch of hair. 3 with white patch of hair and 1 without a white patch of hair. And 1 without a white patch of hair. That is my question answered. 6 marks in the back. Let's do a final example. Example number 3. It says that in rabbits, black fur is produced by the allele capital letter B and white fur by the allele small letter b. The fact that they are saying that black fur is controlled by capital letter B, we know that the allele for black fur in this case is dominant. And the fact that the allele for white fur is represented by small letter b, we know that the allele for white fur in this instance is recessive. The table below shows the genotypes of some rabbits. We've got rabbit 1 to 3 and their genotypes. Let's go into the questions. 2.1.1. What is the phenotype? A. Produced by the recessive allele. We know that the recessive allele is represented by small letter, and we know that the allele small letter b controls white fur. So the answer for this one has to be white fur, because the phenotypes describes the physical appearance of this organism. Therefore, the allele small letter b produces white fur. What is the phenotype of rabbit number 2? Rabbit number 2 is capital letter B, small letter b. We know that in a heterozygous condition like this, then the dominant allele will determine the phenotype, and the effects of this recessive allele are going to be masked, which tells me that rabbit number 2 is going to have black fur. Rabbit number 2 is going to have black fur. 2.1.2, if we give the number only 1, 2, or 3 of the rabbits that is or are A. Purebred. Purebred simply means homozygous. We've got rabbit number 1, which is homozygous dominant, and we also have rabbit number 3, which is homozygous recessive. Number B, they say that give the number 1 to 3 of the rabbits that is or are homozygous dominant. Homozygous dominant is only rabbit number 1. Homo, same, dominant, capital letters. So it is rabbit number 1. Use a genetic cross to show the percentage chance of rabbits 1 and 3 having an offspring with white fur. So let's look at rabbit number 1. Rabbit number 1 is homozygous dominant. Rabbit number 3 is homozygous recessive. So let's produce a genetic cross for that. Again, our structure, P1, in front of P1, we write phenotype. And we know that rabbit number 1 was capital letter B, which means that the phenotype there is going to be black, fair. And rabbit number 3 had the genotype small letter b, which tells me that rabbit number 3 had white, fair. Below phenotype, we're going to write genotype. So for black fair, we already know that rabbit number 1 was capital letter B, and rabbit number 3 was small letter b. We're simply copying it from the table. Below genotype now follows meiosis. Below meiosis now comes my gametes. And I know that with gametes, I only separate the genotype with a comma. Hence, it is going to be capital letter B, comma, capital letter B, cross, small letter b, comma, small letter b. Below gametes now follows fertilization. Now I'm going to make my Punnett square. 3 boxes to the side, 3 boxes downwards. So it is going to be 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Top left box, I write gametes. In box number 1 and box number 2. In box number 1, I'm going to write the first gamete for the rabbit with black face, so it is going to be capital letter B, and then the second gamete capital letter B. In box number 3 and box number 4, I'm going to write small letter b from the second parent. Now when box 1 and 3 combine, they're going to give me capital letter B, small letter b. When box 1 and 4 combine, they're going to give me capital letter B, small letter b. When box 2 and 3 combine, they're going to give me capital letter B, small letter b. When box 2 and 4 also combine, they're going to give me capital letter B, small letter b. Now below fertilization, I write F1 in front of F1. Genotype. In front of genotype, I simply copy the genotypes there, so it is going to be capital letter B, small letter b, capital letter B, small letter b, capital letter B, small letter b, capital letter B, small letter b. Below genotype now comes phenotype. So rabbit number 1, it is going to be capital letter B, small letter b. I know in this case, capital letter B is going to be stronger than small letter b, and therefore this is going to be black fair. The same applies for all the offspring. So I'm simply going to write all black fair, right? But this is not answering the question. The question was specific. We are supposed to show the percentage chance of rabbits 1 and 3 having an offspring that has got white fur, right? So now I'm supposed to do some math, right? The percentage chance, let me write it there. Percentage chance. Now, how many of these rabbits have got white fur? It is 0. Out of a grand total of how many offspring? Out of 4. Since they're saying it is a percentage, then I'm simply going to multiply by 100. And 0 over 4 multiplied by 100 will simply give me 0%. So that is my final answer. Until next time, bye-bye.